Amaka was just 16, but her dreams were bigger than the hills of Obudu. She wanted to be a doctor, maybe even a scientist. Every night, after pounding yam and fetching water, she would sit by the flickering lantern and read quietly, her eyes dancing across pages filled with possibility. But she had to hide her books under the floorboard. Her mother, Mama Ebel, didn't believe girls needed education. Books won't find you a husband, she always said. A woman's place is in the kitchen, not the classroom. Still, Amaka kept reading in secret. Every new word she learned was a quiet rebellion. Every solved math problem was a small victory. She didn't ask for much, just a chance. But one afternoon, as she returned from the stream, her heart stopped. Smoke, the smell of burning paper. She rushed into the hut and found her books, her precious books, crackling in the fire pit. Mama Ebel stood nearby, arms folded, her face as hard as stone. "I told you to stop this foolishness," she said, her voice sharp. Amaka didn't speak. Her throat closed up, but her eyes, those fierce, hopeful eyes, filled with tears. She didn't cry out. She just watched the flames eat away at her dreams. Her father said nothing. Her brothers laughed from the corner. No one stood up for her. In that moment, surrounded by ashes, Amaka felt something inside her break. But deep down, something else was born, a quiet, burning determination that even fire couldn't kill. The fire had gone out, but the smell of smoke still clung to the air. Bits of blackened paper floated on the wind. What was left of Amaka's books, her future, her secret dream. She sat on the cold floor, staring at the ashes. She didn't cry. Not out loud. But inside, her scream was loud enough to shake the sky. No one heard it, though. No one even looked her way. Her father sat outside, peeling yams in silence. He had watched Mama Ebel throw the books into the fire. He said nothing. Not a word. Amaka looked at him through the doorway, silently begging him to say something, to stand up for her. But he only looked away, like her pain was too inconvenient to see. Her brothers, both older, both loud, laughed like it was a joke. One of them said, "At least now she can focus on marriage." The other added, "She was wasting time anyway." Their words cut deeper than knives. Amaka felt like she was shrinking, like her voice didn't matter, like she was invisible in her own home. She wanted to scream, to run, to punch something, but all she could do was sit there, shaking. Her heart was breaking, but her face stayed calm. It always had to be calm. Later that night, when everyone slept, Amaka crept outside. She knelt near the spot where her books had burned. She ran her fingers through the ashes. Her hands turned black, but she didn't care. She found a half-burnt page with a few math problems still visible. She held it to her chest like it was gold. In that moment, something strange happened. Her sadness didn't leave, but something stronger started to grow beside it. Anger, fire, strength. Her dreams were in ashes now, yes. But her spirit? It was still burning. Even without books, even without support, she knew she wasn't done. She couldn't be. Somewhere deep inside, she whispered a promise to herself. "I will rise. Even if no one helps me. Even if no one believes in me." No one heard her cry. But they would hear her one day. That much she knew. The nights in Obudu were quiet, except for the soft sound of crickets and the rustling of palm trees in the wind. Most girls were already asleep, tired from a day of housework. But not Amaka. Every night, just after her family went to bed, she would sneak out barefoot, with a small notebook hidden in her wrapper. She walked down a narrow path lit only by moonlight, her heart beating fast. Not with fear, but with hope. At the edge of the village, behind the old church, Miss Ifeoma waited with a small lantern and a warm smile. She was one of the few people who believed in Amaka. A teacher in the local school, Miss Ifeoma saw something in the girl that others chose to ignore. Intelligence, fire, potential. Everyone else called Amaka a waste of time. Miss Ifeoma called her, my brightest student. They sat under a mango tree, their books spread out on a low wooden bench. With nothing but moonlight and the glow of a flickering lantern, they studied math, science, English, everything Amaka had missed. Sometimes Miss Ifeoma brought old textbooks from the school. She always warned Amaka, "If anyone finds out, I could lose my job." But she never missed a night. Amaka soaked up every word like water. Her mind felt alive again. She asked questions, solved problems, and even corrected a mistake in one of the textbooks. "You're meant for more, Amaka," Miss Ifeoma said one. "Don't ever forget that." But it wasn't easy. Some nights were cold. Some nights Amaka came hungry. Once, she had to run and hide in a bush when she heard footsteps. But none of it stopped her. The more people said she couldn't do it, the harder she tried. Miss Ifeoma never treated her like a poor village girl. She treated her like a student, like a human being with a future. And for the first time in a long time, Amaka started to believe in that future too. Under that moonlit sky, two women, one young, one brave, chose to fight against a world that tried to keep girls in the shadows. And every night, with every word learned, Amaka took one step closer to the light. Amaka's days started before the sun came up. Before she could think about books or dreams, there was rice to wash, yams to pound, and water to fetch from the far stream. Her hands were always busy, scrubbing, carrying, lifting. Her feet were always tired. At the market, she helped her mother sell tomatoes and dry fish. The sun beat down hard, and the customers were impatient. If she dared to sit or rest, Mama Ebel would snap. "You think life is about reading books? Sell this pepper first." But Amaka had learned to be patient. She smiled at customers and counted change carefully, using every chance to practice her math in her head. She watched the newspaper wrappers they used to wrap goods. Some had old exam questions. Some had stories from faraway places. Whenever she saw a clean piece, she quietly folded it and slipped it into her pocket like a treasure. At night, when the market closed and the house went quiet, she brought out her secret collection. Discarded newspapers, torn pages, banana leaves. Anything she could write on. She didn't have real notebooks anymore, but she had her mind, her will, and a small piece of charcoal. She would sit on the floor by the faint light of a kerosene lamp. On the back of banana leaves, she copied math problems she remembered from night lessons. On the newspaper, she underlined big words she didn't know, whispering them softly, trying to make them her own. Her hands were rough from pounding yam, but they held her dreams gently. Her eyes were tired from the day's work, but they lit up when she read. Every number solved, every new word learned. It was her secret world, a place where she wasn't just a girl from the market, but a student, a thinker, a girl who could go far. Sometimes she fell asleep with the paper still in her lap and charcoal on her fingers. But even in sleep, her dreams kept moving forward. She had no desk, no uniform, no permission, but she had hunger. Not just for food, but for knowledge. And that hunger was stronger than anything that tried to stop her. The day the letter came, Amaka was sweeping the compound. Her feet were dusty, her back a little sore, but her heart was calm. Then she heard her name. The village postman, a kind old man with missing teeth, handed her a brown envelope. It had her name on it, spelled right in bold letters. Her fingers shook as she opened it. Her eyes moved slowly across the page. She read the words once, then again. "You have been awarded a scholarship to sit for the national exams in Owerri. Top girl candidates from rural areas have been selected." Her mouth fell open. Her knees almost gave way. She wanted to scream with joy, to laugh, to dance. All those nights reading by lantern light, solving math on banana leaves, hiding books under the floor, someone had seen her. Someone believed she was worth it. She ran to show her mother, heart pounding, eyes glowing. "Mama, look, I got a scholarship. I can go to Owerri to write the exam." She thought maybe, just maybe, her mother would smile, be proud, even hug her. But Mama Ebel's face turned cold. She didn't even read the full letter. "This again," she snapped. "You want to disgrace me? You think a girl's future is in paper and pen?" And before Amaka could say another word, her mother grabbed the letter and tore it in half. Then again, and again. Tiny pieces of Amaka's dream floated to the floor. For a long moment, Amaka just stood there frozen. Her voice was gone. Her hope was sinking fast. But later that night, when everyone had gone to sleep, she tiptoed outside with a small oil lamp. She knelt and picked up every torn piece. Some were crumpled, some stained, but she didn't care. Gently, like handling something sacred, she smoothed them out. Using cassava starch and a piece of old cloth, she began to glue the pieces back together. It wasn't perfect. The lines didn't match exactly, but the words were still there. Her name, the date, the opportunity. She looked at the patched letter, tears on her cheeks, and whispered, "You can tear paper, but not my spirit." That night, Amaka didn't just rebuild a letter. She rebuilt her heart. And nothing, not even her mother, was going to stop her now. Amaka left before sunrise. The sky was still dark, and the village was quiet. She carried a small nylon bag with her torn scholarship letter, a spare wrapper, and 800 Nigerian nairas wrapped in a handkerchief. Her mother hadn't said goodbye. Her brothers didn't notice she was gone. No one in her family believed in this journey. But she did. The road to Owerri was long. Too long to walk, but she started anyway. With each step, she told herself, just reach the next turn. Just one more mile. Her slippers wore thin. Her legs ached, but she kept moving. By mid-morning, she reached a small roadside market. An older woman selling oranges called her over. "Where are you going, child, looking this tired?" Amaka hesitated, then told her the truth. The woman looked at her with kind eyes and gave her a piece of bread and a cold sachet of water. "You remind me of my daughter," she said. She also wanted to learn. Further down the road, Amaka met a bus conductor. She explained her situation again, showing him the patched-up letter. He scratched his head, then said, "You don't have enough, but enter. God go bless me another way." He let her ride halfway free. At the next stop, she met a young beggar boy who gave her directions and even shared his roasted corn. "I no go school," he said, "but you fit make it." Each time she thought she'd reached the end of her strength, someone helped. Not family, not anyone rich, but strangers with good hearts. People who saw something in her eyes, something stubborn, something pure. By the time she reached the edge of Owerri, her feet were blistered, her stomach empty, and her clothes dusty. But she was smiling. She could see the exam center gates in the distance, big, metal, and real. She stood there for a long moment, taking it all in. She had made it. With no blessing, no money, no map, just belief. And as she stepped through the gates, she whispered, "I didn't come this far to fail." Amaka wasn't just walking to Owerri. She was walking toward her future, with a patched letter, a hopeful heart, and the kindness of strangers carrying her the whole way. The exam hall in Owerri was huge. The walls were bright, the chairs neatly lined, and the floor polished smooth. Students from all over the state had gathered there, some in shiny shoes, some in brand new uniforms, many chatting and laughing. And then there was Amaka. She walked in barefoot. Her slippers had given up on the road. Her uniform was borrowed from a girl Miss Ifeoma knew. It was a little too big, a little faded, but it was clean. Her hair was roughly tied, her hands a bit dusty, and she clutched a small plastic bag with a pencil, a ruler, and her ID slip. Some students turned to look. A few whispered and giggled. One girl even laughed and said, "Did she walk here from the farm?" Amaka heard it, every word, but she said nothing. Her face didn't change. She walked straight to her seat and sat down. Her heart was beating fast, but her mind was clear. She had come too far to be shaken now. The invigilator called for silence. Papers were passed around. The clock on the wall started ticking. And then Amaka began. Her pen moved fast. Not messy, but sharp, focused. Like she had been waiting her whole life for this moment. Math questions that scared others made her smile. English passages felt like old friends. She filled each answer sheet like someone pouring out everything they had bottled up inside. The girl who came in barefoot was flying now. Even the invigilator noticed. He paused beside her desk, watching her write without lifting her head once. It wasn't pride. It was purpose. For hours, Amaka forgot the pain in her feet, the hunger in her stomach, the laughter from earlier. She didn't see the other students. She only saw the future she wanted, clear, bright, possible. When the final bell rang, she dropped her pen gently, like it had done its job. She sat back, took a deep breath, and for the first time that day, allowed herself to smile. She didn't have fancy shoes. But she walked into that exam room with something stronger. Fire in her spirit, hope in her heart, and the quiet power of someone who refused to be forgotten. The sun was high over Obudu, and the whole village had gathered under the big mango tree near the chief's house. Someone had brought a small radio and placed it on a wooden stool. People stood around in groups, waiting. It was the day the national exam results would be announced. Names of top students from across Nigeria would be read on air. Most had come just for curiosity, not expecting to hear anything familiar. Amaka stood at the edge of the crowd, quiet, holding her breath. She didn't wear anything fancy, just her usual faded wrapper and an old blouse. Her hands were cold, her heart loud. Her mother, Mama Ebel, sat nearby with her arms folded and a proud frown on her face. "Let's see what her foolish books have done," she muttered. The radio crackled. The announcer's voice came through. "We now bring you the list of the top-performing students in this year's national exam, girls' division." Everyone leaned closer. The names started. First from the north, then the west, then east, and then, first position in Nigeria, Amaka Ebel from Obudu village. Silence. Real silence. It was like the whole village forgot how to breathe. For a second, no one moved. Not even the birds in the trees. People slowly turned to look at Amaka, as if unsure they heard right. Even Mama Ebel froze. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Then came the whispers. "Did he say Amaka? Our Amaka? From here?" And then applause. It started slow, then grew loud and fast. People clapped, some shouted. Children danced around her. A man lifted the radio high and replayed the name. Amaka Ebel from Obudu. There it was again. Real. True. Amaka didn't cry, though her eyes watered. She stood still, her chin up, her heart steady. All those nights under the moonlight, all those torn papers and tired feet, they had brought her here. To this moment. Mama Ebel didn't clap. She sat still, looking at her daughter like she was seeing her for the first time. Maybe in that moment she was. And Amaka? She just smiled softly. Not to show off. Not to prove anyone wrong. But because she finally felt seen. A few days after the radio announcement, big vans rolled into Obudu. They had logos painted on the sides, TV stations, newspapers, even a government car. For the first time, reporters with microphones and cameras walked the dusty paths of the village, not for a festival or a chief's speech, but for a girl, Amaka. The same villagers who once called her stubborn now stood proudly, pointing to her house. "That's the girl," they said with wide smiles. "Amaka Ebel, our very own genius." Children ran behind the news crews, excited. Market women who once told her books were a waste now said, "We always knew she was special." Amaka stood outside her small home, wearing her faded dress and the same tattered sandals she wore to a wherry. They were cracked and dusty, but she wore them like a crown. Her face was calm, her back straight. She didn't wear makeup or jewelry, but she shined brighter than anyone else. The cameras pointed at her, and a reporter asked, "Amaka, how did you do it?" She looked into the lens and smiled softly. "I didn't give up, even when it felt like the world gave up on me." The crowd clapped. Some wiped tears from their eyes. A few elders whispered, "She will go far, this one." But Mama Ebel stood far from the cameras. She didn't want to be interviewed. She didn't smile. She watched everything from a shadowed corner, arms crossed tightly. Maybe she felt proud. Maybe she felt shame. No one could tell. But she didn't stop her daughter this time. She let Amaka shine. Later, one reporter asked to take a photo of the family. Amaka turned to look at her mother, as if to say, "Come stand with me." Mama Ebel looked away. So Amaka stood alone, holding her patched letter in one hand, the weight of her journey in the other. She didn't need everyone's praise. She didn't need to prove anything anymore. That spotlight wasn't about revenge. It was about rising. From shame to spotlight, from silence to applause. Amaka stood as living proof that even in a place where dreams are often crushed, a single girl with fire in her soul can change everything. And she did it in tattered sandals. Years passed, but Amaka never forgot where she came from. She never forgot the floor where she hid her books, the fire that burned her dreams, or the nights she studied under the moon. She also never forgot the girls who still lived that life, the ones who were told they weren't smart enough, strong enough, or worth enough. So when she became a graduate, and later a respected woman with international awards and scholarships, she didn't move to a big city or forget her village. Instead, she came back to Obudu, with plans, blueprints, and a purpose. At the very spot where her old house once stood, a new building rose. Clean, strong, full of windows and light. A school, the first all-girls school in the entire region. Its name, Ashes to Answers Academy. At the front gate stood a simple but powerful plaque. It read, "Dedicated to every girl ever told she can't." People came from nearby towns to see it. The same villagers who once laughed now brought their daughters to register. Even Mama Ebel, older now and quieter, stood by the gate one morning and touched the plaque gently with her wrinkled hand. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. Inside the classrooms, young girls wore clean uniforms and wrote on real notebooks, not banana leaves. They raised their hands, asked questions, dreamed aloud. And every time they passed that plaque, they remembered the girl who walked barefoot to her future, and returned with a key to open the door for others. Amaka built more than a school. She built hope. She built answers from ashes.